Welcome to Valhalla Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Becky Hill, otherwise known as Soul Chaser Becky, and I am a proud Viking geek. I fell in love with the history, culture and mythology of the Viking Age, and I have been on an endless quest for more ever since. Join me as I discuss all things Norse with those who have been inspired by Viking Age history and Norse mythology in their creative works, or those who have studied the sagas and archaeology, and review how such subjects are being presented to modern audiences today. If you like Viking stuff, you are welcome in my Valhalla, and I hope you stay for the conversation. Welcome everyone to Valhalla Conversations podcast, where we talk all things Norse, whether it's history, mythology, artifacts, sagas, poetics, and of course everything that's been reinterpreted and retold since. And today I am delighted to welcome our 21st guest to Valhalla, Terry, otherwise known as Bjarni the Cabbage Killer. Welcome, Terry, to Valhalla.
Hello, glad to be here.
I'm very pleased to welcome you. Now, I guess we should probably explain to our viewers and listeners why you're known as Bjarni the Cabbage Killer.
Well, it's my Viking nickname, which was given to me about 10 or 11 years ago now. I actually know even longer. Don't the years build up? So it's probably about 11 or 12 years ago now, when I was at a big science festival called Big Bang Fair. And I was doing a weapons demonstration using sharp weapons, all about the physics of weapons. And I had a sort of a crowd of kids all around me, and behind barriers, I should say. And at the end of it, so what I do at the end is I use a cabbage. It has to be a specific type of cabbage, otherwise it doesn't last, hold up very well. And so I was using the sharp weapons on that, and I finish off with slicing it up with a Dane axe. And after I'd gone back to my main stall, where I have all my display and everything, I was just setting up, and this little lad, about 10 years old, so it's probably a year 5 or year 6, and he comes up to me and he looks at me and he said, "You're Bjarni the Cabbage Killer." And I thought, that is now my name. So
that's
it was
awesome.
a name given to me by a 10-year-old lad at the Big Bang Fair in the NEC in Birmingham.
That is awesome, and that actually really suits the whole, I guess, the idea behind all these Norse nicknames that we hear about in sagas and poetics.
Exactly.
Such as Bjarni, not Bjarni Long Breeches. Oh my God,
Ragnar.
Something Long Breeches. Ragnar, was it Ragnar? That was it, Ragnar Long Breeches, because he supposedly wore hairy trousers of sorts.
Yes. Yeah. So he my nickname was actually given to me, as all nicknames should be. You can't just take one for yourself.
That is very fitting. And elaborating further on that, because obviously you mentioned you were to a big science fair, the Big Bang.
Yeah.
This is because your main role is not just talking about Viking history, but connecting it to the modern knowledge of science that we all have today for children in primary schools and beyond.
That is true. Yeah. So I'm known as the Science Viking. That's like my website, scienceviking.com, because while I've been a Viking re-enactor for 36 years now. Dear. I was also a science teacher, and so when I left formal teaching, I actually set up to do science parties and science shows. So I had a couple of science shows that I did at other science festivals, British Science Festival and Big Bang Fair and whatever, and they went really well. Sort of travel universities and what we're doing that, but it was too much like hard work. And I thought, why don't I merge my love of history and the reenactment with the science? So I became the Science Viking. By when I'm teaching about Vikings, then I also include a lot of the science in there, because there's loads and loads of science. Weapons is all about physics, and so are ships, really. and the various things like the Viking sunstone and their navigation and everything. That's all physics and chemistry, and then of course I can do the anatomy. Depending on how gory they want the stories of battles to get. Yeah, but it's these things naturally go together. And so my whole philosophy is, when I go into a school or when I'm displaying to the public at an event or something, I always sort of say, look, this is the way that teaching used to be many years ago, where it's not like it is all artificial in schools, where you do one lesson is all about this and the next lesson is all about this and the next lesson is it's this topic here, and none of those things are allowed to touch. It's like boxes not allowed to touch each other. Well, they should be touching. In fact, they should all be jumbled up together, because the way we learn best is by learning about lots of different things and how they're all interrelated all at once. So that's what we do. So they learn about history, and they also get the science as well, sometimes without even realizing it.
I know that it certainly makes a point when I think about Viking Age shipbuilders, and how they kind of like use the science of, I presume, I'm going to say fire, but I could be wrong, kind of like to help shape the wood and to kind of like carve the wood, but also to like typical mixes such as all the tar that they use to kind of like waterproof everything and make them stick. And it's just, there's so much to it, as well as kind of
obviously back in those days it wasn't science.
No, it wasn't.
And all science is just Latin for knowledge. And so they would have all that knowledge, but that would all be sort of practical knowledge that's built up, a lot of it through trial and error, but building. It's also science is building on what's gone before. So something works, and you find out that something works, and then you think, right, how can I improve on that? And that's how things go. And so I mean, nowadays we call it science, but at the end of the day, all it is just knowledge, and it's just we have a greater knowledge about how these things work, because we understand the chemistry and the physics behind it. That's all it is.
Yeah. I mean, it's making me think now, to of course, different accounts that you sometimes come across, although I've come across it mostly in historical fiction more than actual non-fiction, but of kind of like when someone's received a gut wound, they drink something that's really strong and pungent, usually onions. It's always onions. To see if they can smell it coming out the other end, which is obviously a sign of a leakage. But then, of course, there's different, probably herbal remedy type bandages or poultices that they would have treated to common injuries back then, I suppose, to a degree.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, that leads nicely on to an Anglo-Saxon medicine, Bald's eye salve, from Bald's Leech Book. So
really?
I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
No, not heard of that at all.
Okay, so Bald's Leech Book, which it's in the British British Library, and it's a leech book. So in Anglo-Saxon times, a leech was a doctor. Leech book is all his a collection of all his recipes and remedies for various ailments and illnesses and stuff. And so he'd written all this stuff down. It was written, I think, between about 940 and 970 or something like that, in Winchester. So Bald was a monk, and that document has come down through the ages, survived a few things together with like Beowulf and whatever, and it survived all this time. And back in 2015, 2016, there's Dr. Christina Lee at Nottingham University.
Oh, yes, I know Christina.
Yeah, and she was translating it.
Oh, wow.
And she came across this recipe for a wen, W-E-N, and to paraphrase and summarize, it basically says take onions and garlic or leeks. So they called it onions and cropliach, which is either garlic or leek, although garlic seems to be better. And mash them all up in a mortar and pestle, and then to an equal amounts, and then to that you take equal amounts of wine and ox gall, which is the bile from the gallbladder of a cow.
Oh,
yeah, lovely stuff. And you mix them all together. And it says to do it in a brass vessel. And and then leave it for 9 nights. And on the 10th day, you strain it through a cloth, to clarify it, get rid of all the bits. And then it says, apply at night to the eye with a feather. And afterwards, it also says the best medicine. So the story is that when she read this, she knew about Freya Harrison, who's a Viking re-enactor, and was a microbiologist at Nottingham University as well. So they got together because they had a common interest. So there's medicine from the 10th century that says it's the best medicine, and Freya is a microbiologist in the lab at the university. So I thought, why don't they make some and try it out? So that's exactly what they did. Freya knows that. Oh, by the way, a wen, again, it's sort of like a sort of a blemish, a lump, or a zit, or something. And this in particular case was a sty on your eyelid, which, as a microbiologist, Freya knows is caused by a bacterium, Staphylococcus aureus. So they got organic ingredients, and they even tried to source them from the local area around Winchester, and they had to use dried bile because you can't really get it anymore. The abattoirs won't send it to you. I've tried. But anyway, they made it, and they tried it on Staphylococcus aureus, and it worked.
Wow!
So actually, when they put it in petri dishes, it's actually killed the bacteria. But so would domestos. So you don't want to be putting bleach in your eye.
No.
As well, you can imagine if because that's going to trickle into your eye, isn't it? That is onions, garlic. The wine obviously turns into vinegar, plus the bile, all that mixture. That's going to sting like hell, isn't it? That is going to really sting. So, you don't want to go for all that if it's not going to work. But also if it's just like a bleaching agent, that could be dangerous to the eye. So when they tested it against various forms of bacteria, and they found out that it had worked differently against different bacteria. Some it worked great, some middling, some not at all. So it's actually an antibiotic. And well, basically, to cut a long story short, it is currently, well, I've not, I think the last paper I read was a couple of years ago, but they tried to get it into clinical trials, and it went through stage 1, like the safety tests with a healthy volunteer. But I don't think they've managed to get funding for it, which is stupid. Because what they were aiming to use it as was a possible treatment for drug-resistant diabetic ulcers, which if you get an untreatable infection, like, well, usually MRSA, and our antibiotics are literally 50-50 whether they work against MRSA. If they don't work, the treatment is amputation. Well, it turns out Bald's eye salve kills MRSA better than anything we actually have. It is a powerful antibiotic, and the last paper that I read on it, it was saying that it's basically because each of those individual ingredients is slightly antimicrobial, but when you leave it and you let it brew for that 9 nights, basically you leave it to brew, and 9 is a good time because that's 3 times 3. Which 9 and 3 is a mystical number, and multiples of that. So you've got that. But it turns out that 9 nights is about how long it takes to get to its maximum potency. And after that, it's dribble away with it. And don't leave it long enough, it's not as good. So in that time, there's all sorts of chemical reactions going on in there as it's brewing away. They know that it's the compound is probably one of several compounds based around allicin, which is the antimicrobial compound in alliums. And so I think they're probably well on the way to figuring out what all the active ingredients are, but it's actually a combination of things rather than just the one thing that they like. You know, like aspirin is just that one ingredient, salicylic acid. So yeah, but it's a lot of medicine isn't like that. It's a combination, especially natural remedies. It's a combination. So yeah, but it turns out it kills MRSA better than anything we currently have. So the fact that they've not been able to get funding for the clinical trials seems a bit, yeah, to me that sort of smacks of big pharma, don't it? Because because it's going to be a cheap thing because it's using really cheap ingredients, and so it's probably not something they can make money out of. Yeah, which is whenever I tell this story, I always say, yeah, it's a good argument for the nationalisation of the pharmaceutical industry, because
that's a good point.
Shouldn't be making profit out of people's illness, should you? So anyway, so it's a powerful antibiotic, and it comes all the way back from the 10th century, which together then Christina and Freya, who I think last time I looked was now an assistant professor at Winchester University, not Winchester, another one being Warwick. It's in Warwickshire anyway. Anyway, the names fall out of my head. Names always fall out of my head. Anyway, yeah, Warwick University, I think, yeah, she's an assistant professor there now. But they've set up this thing called the Ancient Biotics Project. So there's a website which is using old manuscripts as an avenue of drug discovery. So
it's really clever.
Yeah, which is new. Apparently in China, they've been doing this for years. It's old hat there. And I dare say there's some Chinese person going to watch this and thinking, yeah, we've been doing that for years. You're only just catching up with us. But yeah, they're it's a new avenue of drug discovery, and they found quite a few using just quite common things like, you know, even stinging nettles. Yeah, there's all sorts of they can use stinging nettles for. So, but this is all going through the proper scientific procedures. So yeah, so it's really, really good.
Oh, thanks for sharing that. That was a wonderful story and stuff I've never heard of. I mean, I was vaguely aware of Christina's work back when she was working on it.
Yeah.
And I think I read a blog post or an interview she did somewhere about kind of medicine and injuries in Viking Age time, but it was so long ago now. I think it was like definitely before COVID.
Yes.
But yeah, I remember meeting Christina at a couple of Viking Age symposiums or conferences that I got to go to, like the Midlands Viking Symposium I got to go to for a number of consecutive years, and she was very welcoming considering I was one of the very few non-academics there. Everyone else was studying it. I was just like, I just want to learn more for free without going to university because I can't afford it. As much as I would love to study it full-time professionally, I just can't. Time and life and money are all against me and other things. But yeah, I will definitely be looking up at that website later on, because and you're right about the kind of like the Chinese angle, because everyone's familiar kind of like with the word of Chinese medicine, but it always kind of brings up the stereotype of something kind of like kooky involving kind of like weird things that you wouldn't usually put together. But it shows that kind of like they're acknowledging the knowledge of the past more versus us, where we're all so kind of like men and women of the 21st century going forward. So we don't often look back and consider what people knew then as being worth what we know now. There's almost like a superiority-ness, isn't there? Between knowledge now and knowledge then.
Although I think the thing about Chinese traditional medicine, it's called Chinese traditional medicine, but it was, I might be wrong, but from what I understood, it only goes back to about the 1950s, and it was all done during the Great Cultural Revolution by Chairman Mao, who sort of said that he wanted to, you know, do all this stuff, and a lot of it was all sort of entirely made up. Just get some good sounding. But for example, I think is it still, or it certainly was, the best medicine against malaria was the artemisinin, which was because one of the things that the Chinese are excellent at is extracting compounds from plants, and they for years they were able to do it much better in the West. I mean, they might still be able to do it better, but when it comes to extracting the active compounds from plants, the Chinese are world leaders in that. So that's one thing they're really, really, really good at. So yeah, but there's so much in nature that you have to, back in the Viking times, they would have seen what works for various things. Like I'm rubbish at herbalism, but you've got various plants that are called sort of bone knit and woundwort and all that sort of thing, and those all come from the traditional ways of using them, because they did actually help with all these things, because the plants are our natural sort of pharmacy, aren't they?
Yeah, that's basically all we need, kind of like knowledge of plants and animals and what not to eat and what to eat.
Yes.
Because knowledge of poisons and toxins is probably just as valuable then as it should be now, really.
Exactly.
I'm constantly telling my 5-year-old kind of like, don't eat those berries, they're for the birds, so we call them bird berries.
Yeah. Yeah. But and many of the things that are in plants are actually poisonous. But most poisons can be used medicinally, because all a drug is a substance that has an effect on the body, and lots of these drugs come from plants. And it's Paracelsus, the 15th, 16th century alchemist, who's known as the father of toxicology, and he was the one who sort of, to again paraphrase it, he had a 16th century way of putting it, but it's basically the dose that makes the poison. And a lot of things that are considered poisons now are actually medicines. You just use them at the right dose and they have a beneficial effect rather than killing you. For example, botulinum.
Oh.
Yeah, so your Botox, people go and have their injections of to make themselves apparently look young, although I don't see it. Just makes them look like android mannequin type things, don't it? The botulinum toxin is the most dangerous toxin on the planet. There's a picture somewhere of a pile of about 2 kilos of botulinum toxins, a white crystal, and they said, that little pile there could kill every single person on the planet. So we're talking parts per 100 billion of that. Just a few molecules can completely sort of stop the paralyze. It's basically a paralyzing agent. So but all these different things. So you've got herbalism is where our medicine originally comes from, really. But again, using these are all my own personal opinions, by the way, but just using the straight plants from nature, I find problematic, because you've no idea how much of the dose of the active compound that you're after. You've got no idea how much of it is in that plant. So it might not have enough, in which case it's going to be useless, or it might have too much and then you overdose. But you can't tell just by looking at the plant. So I'm sure there's herbalists who'll come and right, and I'm quite always happy to be put right. But so that's why I like modern medicine. So while we've got recipes from ancient times are being used today, we have that modern 21st century scientific eye on it, and we can make it be safe.
Yes. So, I mean, you talk about kind of like the dosage and toxins. It certainly made me think about alcohol, because of course strong alcohol is damaging to any cells, no matter whether you're drinking it or kind of like dabbing it on a cleaning surface. That's why we had alcohol gel so much during the COVID pandemic years.
Exactly.
Of course, I've got no idea how strong proper mead would have been back in the day, or even kind of like watered ale, because of course Jorvik Museum's always telling you in the commentaries that go around that because the Derwent was not clean to drink, they'd just drink watered ale all the time.
Yes, because part of the process of making these things is sort of fermentation, and also you boil the water as well. So it kills the microbes, or most of them. Then the fermentation process gets rid of most of the rest of them. So it's that's why we all used to drink beer. Although saying that, if you had a clean source of water, then of course you drink water. But a lot of towns and whatever, you couldn't, because the water wasn't clean. So it's but if you've got clean water, drink clean water. and that's what they used to do anyway.
So, of course, we've touched on how you're Bjarni the Cabbage Killer, teaching about the physics of blades hitting bodies and what can happen. Excuse me. I know, kind of like from browsing your wonderful website, that you also kind of take on other character type roles to explore, such as medieval medicine.
Yes. I've got sort of two main characters that I use. There's Bjarni, and then there's also Albert Harvey, who's a Tudor alchemist, which is my other main one. But I also have things like I've got a medieval monk, where I do an art workshop.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Oh, it doesn't. I mean, I've done it a few times. I've still got all the stuff, but I've not done it for ages. But it's a nice one, especially for schools, because I do a lot of work in schools. In fact, I'm off to a school tonight, and I've got a science festival on Sunday as well. And then more schools next week. So yeah, I've spent a lot of time in primary schools. But anyway, but my medieval monk, Brother Mellitus, who's actually named after, I think it's something like the 4th Archbishop of Canterbury. So it's back in the 7th century, or was the 8th century, 7th or 8th century. And I do a workshop all about the making of the Lindisfarne Gospels.
Oh, wow. Can I come? I want to come along. I want to learn all about that.
So I've got sort of laminated pages from the Lindisfarne Gospel, all the artwork and some of the writing. And it's all laminated because like kids get their fingers all over it. So it's in a folder, so it's a modern folder, but that's the only modern thing there. But otherwise, we in this, and it can be anything from a half day to an all day workshop. And basically we make iron gall ink using like proper ingredients. So it's authentic ink, the way that they've been using since about the 6th or 7th century. And that iron gall ink went all the way up to about 17th, 18th century. They only stopped using it because it's slightly corrosive. So once the metal pen nibs were introduced, they found that it sort of corroded the metal pen nibs. So they sort of developed other types of ink that weren't acidic, like iron gall ink is. If the iron gall ink isn't made just right, because it can still be slightly acidic. So one big problem for conservation of manuscripts is the fact that the iron gall ink does actually degrade. Basically, because it's acidic, it destroys the paper or the parchment that it's on.
Shame.
And sometimes you open it up and it just crumbles because the ink has eaten it away. But apparently in the Lindisfarne Gospels, when they've analysed the ink, they've actually found that it was pH neutral because once it was made, it seems that they added powdered chalk or limestone to it to neutralise it, which is why the Lindisfarne Gospels has lasted so long, because they got rid of that acidicness. So even back then in the 8th century, they knew what they were doing.
They definitely did.
They realised that this ink was corrosive and how to get rid of that corrosion by neutralising it with limestone or chalk. So
I wonder if they must have noticed that old books in their time were crumbling because of that ink. Yeah,
because if the ink isn't made properly, then it can get quite corrosive. Also, if you add too much iron sulfate into it as well, because you find a lot of old manuscripts, what was black and it turns brown. And that's because not all of the iron is reacted with the tannins from the oak galls, and so basically the iron oxidizes and it goes rusty. So where the brown comes from, which also is going to degrade the parchment or paper. So anyway,
it's all fascinating.
That's the thing, you see. Everyone thinks, we're making some ink, but then you look at the chemistry of it and you look at the history of how it's made, how it's used and how it's made and everything. one of my favourite recipes for
Mhm.
iron galling is the one that was written down by Sir Isaac Newton himself.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
and he actually uses strong ale in his recipe.
Oh.
And I've made it. I'll tell you what, I made it using old speckled hen. And I'll tell you what, it was absolutely gorgeous. It smelt lovely.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
and it also, it was so black on the page. It was so
Mm.
black. And it sort of went on so beautifully and had such lovely coverage. Yeah, but then you'd expect this, like, person who's still considered the greatest scientist ever, even
Mm.
more than Einstein. Yeah, you think you know how to make good ink, so yeah,
Mm.
yeah. But you can yeah, if you look up on the internet, you can find his actual recipe for making iron gall ink.
Oh, that's remarkable.
Yeah, but so we do all that, and then the kids can use reed pens or
Mhm.
feather quills to do some writing. So
Mhm.
that's that bit. Um, But then for the artwork, so then I go through the
Mm.
artwork and all the incipit pages and the carpet pages and all that sort of thing and all the illuminations. And then
Mm.
we look at the pigments. A lot of the pigments are poisonous, so we can't use those.
Mm.
But no, I've got samples of them and the original minerals that they come from, so I can show them where the pigments come from. And then they go through the process of making their own paint using non-toxic, they're solid tempera paint blocks
Mhm.
that you can get in art stores. They use those and sort of they crush them up with rocks,
Oh.
and then I've got so they can crush them, so that sort of simulates getting the mineral and crushing that up, and then they can mix it and grind it. So I've got a load of glass mullers, and we just use sort of porcelain tiles and whatever to do the mixing. They can usually we use water for it as they're
Mm.
water-based pigments, but I mean you can use glare, which is made from egg whites, or you can use egg yolk for tempera painting. So they've got all the different binders that we can use, or even sort of rabbit hide glue or something like that. All sorts of different things you can make paint out of, but in schools usually just use water. But they go
Mm.
through, they're using the mullers, which are sort of glass things, sort of
Mhm.
very large flat bottoms. They're like
Okay.
with a glass handle on top, and you use that to sort of grind the pigment so it's really fine and into the water, so it comes out a lovely fine paint. And then they scrape all that off into seashells like oyster shells or mussel shells or whatever, um, or big cockle shells and stuff. And then we don't go through making the brushes, but I show them how the brush.
Mm.
But then they use modern paintbrushes, and then they've made their own ink and done writing with it. They've made their own paint and ground it up and mixed it and everything. Um, Hell of a mess when you ask 30 kids, hell of a mess. But then once they've collected everything, they've made everything, then they can do their own artwork. And I always get them to do some artwork based on what they've seen from the pictures in the Lindisfarne Gospel.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah. So they learn. One time I did it, and I had a written feedback, and one of
Oh.
them was a girl who said, "I thought it was just an art class, but it turned out to be art and history and science."
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah. So,
Oh.
and at the end of the day, that is exactly what it's all about. Yeah. Yeah.
I
So
wish you were at school or lived near me to come to my school when I was growing up, because I would have absolutely loved that.
you know
Because
what,
we just learned about Romans at primary school and it was
yeah,
just boring. And then we moved straight to Victorians. And then we
yeah,
didn't really touch on Vikings until secondary school, but that was purely all about Alfred the Great versus the Vikings. So it was very much Anglo-Saxon
yeah,
biased.
yeah, yeah. You're not the first person to tell me that, actually.
You should consider doing adult classes. I'd sign up if I was geographically nearer. I would be there.
Well, in a way, that's what I do, sort of, because like,
Mm.
when I do the schools, but I also do events.
Mhm.
Like I'm going to be at the Jorvik Viking Festival again in February.
Yay! I'll be there.
Um,
I'll come and
yeah,
find
so
you.
I think that's
Again.
going to be 11, 12 years I've been doing that now.
Oh, wow.
Um, Originally, it was Russell Scott, who used to be the authenticity officer, or in charge of authenticity for the Vikings Re-enactor Society. But he's actually the one who got me into the Vikings all those years ago when I was at university. Yeah. Unfortunately, he died a couple of years ago. Wow. But I keep on the tradition. I'm there. Yeah, I'll go there with his wife, Liz Scott. So we still go. But when I'm there, a lot of people always they come to a reenactment, or they come to a festival, or a pagan festival or something like that, and so many people think, oh yeah, this is for the kids, but no, it's not. In fact, I talk to the adults.
You do. I've seen it.
I'm talking to the adults, but I'll hopefully do it in such a way so that the kids are engaged as well. But I'm telling all the adults all this stuff about all the stuff that you won't find in an ordinary textbook. But from all the archaeological papers and the stuff and it's brilliant. So, and it's the adults who end up staying.
Very much.
Enough. Yeah, and it's the adults who end up staying. So it's definitely much an adults thing. And you can't tell me that a grown man or a grown woman don't like holding a sword or an axe just as much as the kids do.
Oh, I know. I remember, because I had the pleasure of finding you in your tent at the Viking Festival this year, 2025, having recently kind of met each other in a different sphere of Ian Stewart Sharp's Vikings and Valkyries podcast, where your character did a lot better than my character. I will say that. I'm not going to spoil it anymore. But I loved your character. I absolutely loved the fact that you had a talking jet ski. No ski, even, not jet ski, wrong one. But yeah, I was kind of stood patiently on the sidelines waiting for people to stop coming and talk to you. So then I could come and talk to you. But so many people were, both kids and adults. And it was lovely to see, because even though I wasn't directly involved in the conversation, I was listening in and learning indirectly at the same time. And so many people were interested in your fox skin or your cattle sets, or kind of the beads and the ornaments and artifacts that you've recreated to have. And I love the tales you tell about them, both kind of in a narrative sense, but also in a historical sense as well.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, it's all storytelling, isn't it? And while I find it very hard to tell formal stories, because then you have to remember stuff. Whereas when I can make it up as I go along, then I'm okay doing that. So I'm just all I'm doing is telling people about stuff, and hopefully doing it in an engaging way. But when if you go to a reenactment or a historical event or something, and people go and say, oh yeah, do you want to hold a sword and war, and they go and say, okay, I've done that. But when I sort of give them a sword or an axe, and then I say, right, now you can feel the way that it feels in your hand. And if you hold it like this, you can feel this, and if you hold it like this, you can feel this, and then I'll explain the physics behind it. And then they go, oh my god, and then that sort of helps them realize, well, okay, so the reason that axes hit harder than swords is because of so and so, and so I'm explaining the thing, and all of a sudden what they can feel in their hand isn't just, oh look, I'm holding a sword, isn't that nice? They feel that way, and I understand why it feels the way it does. And so hopefully, I think my unique selling point, if you like, is the fact that I enhance their experience by giving them that extra knowledge that maybe some reenactors don't know. So that's sort of what I do. But yes, I was talking about Albert Harvey, wasn't it? And the alchemist. So I got because alchemy is basically history of chemistry, isn't it? And so once I got interested in the history of the chemistry, and then all the alchemists, because again, Sir Isaac Newton, who had all these breakthroughs, he didn't really consider himself a scientist. He considered himself an alchemist. And he wrote vastly more on alchemy than he did on science. So we've got his Principia and his work on optics and gravity and all that sort of thing. And a lot of those were because someone would ask him, what do you think about so and so? And he'd say, I don't know. Give me a couple of days and I'll work it out. And then, he goes away and a couple of days later, he comes back. Oh, yeah. Okay. So here's all the laws of motion and gravity and, gravitational attraction and everything. A lot of it he didn't understand himself. He said, well, what is this gravitational attraction? Only God knows that. Or Einstein, as some people call him, came along with the explanation for that. But back in the 17th century, they didn't know that. But what he could do is explain why they moved or how they moved. He explained the physics behind it. And to him, that was this is my take on it. For him, it was just an interesting problem. Even if he had to invent new maths like calculus to do it, to him it was just an interesting problem. But his main interest was actually in alchemy, and he apparently wrote over 1 million words on alchemy.
Wow!
And unfortunately, a lot of his stuff got broken up and sort of bought by various private collectors. So his stuff is all over the world. But I think there's a project now to digitize all his stuff and all his work on alchemy, and it's all coming together. You can find it on the internet, I think. Work on alchemy, and also he was a biblical prophet as well. Because,
really?
Yes, he was very interested in biblical prophecy, and he actually analysed the Bible and Revelation and all that to try and work out when the end of the world would be. And the reason that you get all these mad American people coming on telly and saying, "Oh, it's the end of the world in so and so," and the rapture's coming, and you get all these tales. I think even the last rapture, which was only a couple of weeks ago, wasn't it? The last one called date for the rapture, and in America, some people did actually sell their cars and belongings and stuff, expecting to sort of get bodily transported up to heaven, but. It didn't happen. And the reason is, and like you've got all these crackpot American TV evangelists and so-called prophets and whatever prophesying the end of the world, but they're all wrong. Because Isaac Newton, he prophesied that it was, I can't remember the exact date, but it's somewhere in 2066.
Oh.
So maybe I'll make it. Maybe I'll get to see it, because I'll be 100 then. If I live to be 100, I might live to see the end of the world. But I mean, who are you gonna trust for the day of the world? Some crackpot American just out to make a quick buck, or arguably the greatest scientist of all time, so Isaac Newton. But anyway, so we got all those different tales, and the reason I really got interested in the alchemy as well is because when I was a science teacher, we had all these different tales of scientists through the ages, and all to illustrate, like what was it, Van Helmont, who is a scientist that tell the story about how he discovered where the biomass of plants come from. It comes from photosynthesis. I don't think he understood that, but the question was, you have a seed, you plant it, and it grows, but where does all the stuff that make a tree come from? Where does it all come from? Because everyone always thinks it comes out of the ground, which is quite natural. So you plant them in the ground, and that's what they grow out of. But he did an experiment for this in the 17th or 18th century. Rubbish the dates. But anyway, he got a massive, great big pot, and he planted a sapling, and he weighed everything. He weighed the sapling, he weighed the amount of soil that he put into it, and he weighed all the amount of water that he put into it and everything, and left it for 5 years, measuring it all the time. And after 5 years, sort of came to the conclusion that, well, in the textbooks, that the year 7s and 8s in Key Stage 3 in secondary school, it says, and by this he discovered that the biomass comes from the air. But he didn't. That revelation didn't come till later, because his conclusion was, well, the only thing I've added is the water. because before I started, this is how much soil weighed. After, when I finished the experiment, it weighs a couple of ounces less. So obviously it didn't come from the soil. Where else can it? Well, the only thing I've added is water. So his conclusion was the biomass comes from water. And in those days, there was still, like, you still had the theory of the four elements, earth, air, fire, and water. So yeah, so he explained it that way. So that was his conclusion. And the thing that I hated is the fact that in the textbooks it said he discovered that the biomass comes from the air, because it's the carbon dioxide fixed by photosynthesis that you get. Yeah, so in a way, sort of all plants and trees are made from thin air. Yeah, they're just made of air, is all. But the textbooks were misrepresenting the story, and I don't like that. And so now I can tell people properly that that's where it came from. So I sort of did all that, and I thought, I'm going to do an alchemist character. But before I started it, I actually spent 2 years researching and learning up about alchemy before I did my first thing, which was at Muncaster Castle, about 6 miles from me in Cumbria. And it went down really well, especially, and I had all these great ideas about all these alchemical experiments that I could do. But at the end of the day, it was all too difficult to do in a tent, and I didn't have the right equipment. So I thought, you know what, I'll just go straight to transmutation. So we'll just go straight to making gold. So as well as having loads of sort of stuff on display, and I can explain all the chemistry and the history behind all these different things, the one actual activity that I do is transmutation, where I take copper coins, and before your very eyes, I transmute them into gold coins. And you think, well, if you're doing that, you must be really rich. But no, I've got a rubbish business model, because all those gold coins that I make, I give them away for free. Yeah, but in the context of an alchemist, I have to say, but this only works through the grace of God. And if you've got any hint of sort of avarice in your heart, you're doing it through greed, profit motive, then it ain't going to work, despite the fact that it's a natural process, because they thought it was a natural process in those days. Although, well, we'll come back to that, because in a way it is, but it's not. But anyway, so they thought it was an entirely natural process. Alchemy was just speeding up those processes. That's all it was doing. But if you didn't have a pure heart and you weren't doing it with the right intention, then it wouldn't work, because it only works by the grace of God. So yeah, that's what they were. So that's what I include in my spiel about it. And of course, you've got to include a bit of Blackadder in there as well. But yeah, so it's all about the story. And I'll tell you what, though, when I do this, I mean, the actual demonstration is really, really simple, and it's actually in a textbook. You can sometimes see it done in schools, especially on school open evenings when the science department's doing their displays, and they might do, they're going to display some transmutation, making gold and whatever. So it's in one of the experiment books from the Royal Society of Chemistry. But it's quite funny, because I do it on a charcoal fire, on a little charcoal fire, and I think it's the first week that I was doing it at Muncaster, and my head of science came along. Well, my old head of science when I used to work at school, and she was watching, and she said, "How do you get that to work?" Because she said, "I've tried doing this, in the classroom using proper equipment," and she said, "I can't get this to work." And I said, "And there you are doing it in a muddy field, a charcoal fire, and you've got it to work every time." And I said, well, it's by the grace of God.
That's That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm just so impressed with the knowledge that you have and the passion and all these tales and anecdotes and the history that's just pouring out of your terrier. It's just sensational.
Oh, well, I don't know. I've done a lot of reading, and I sort of remember a few things, but I have to keep reading up because like some of it falls out my brain or gets lost, and I always like looking for new stuff. Actually, with regards to the alchemy, I was back in September. I was at a Renaissance fair in Kent and doing my alchemist thing over the weekend, and I had a group of science teachers that come. All dressed up in all their fairy costumes and everything, so that was funny. But yeah, it was a group of science teachers from local school, Canterbury College, which was it's a private school, and they said, and one of the teachers absolutely fell in love with me, and said, "Can I be your apprentice? I really want to be your apprentice because I'm not going to keep going. I don't want to be a teacher forever, but I'd love to do this. Yeah, because it's basically I'm still a teacher. I just do it way, but from that, I'm hoping. I mean, to be honest, whether they go for it or not doesn't matter. I'm doing it anyway because it's a resource that I can sell to schools, which is a scheme of work of 12 lessons all about alchemy.
Wow.
And so this would come under STEAM. So most people heard of STEM, sort of science, technology, engineering, maths. Well, STEAM is science, technology, engineering, arts, and maths. Yeah. And so this is going to be a really cross-curricular scheme of work aimed at year 7s or year 8s, probably for after-school clubs, science clubs, STEM clubs. But it's going to include sort of, you've got the science, you've got the history, you've got the art, you've got geography, because like alchemy sort of started really in sort of 1st to 3rd century Egypt. And then after the burning of Alexandria, it moved to Greece. I mean, in 1st to 3rd century Egyptian was sort of like ruled by Greece anyway, so it's sort of like Hellenistic Egypt. But then it sort of moved to Greece, and then with the fall of the Roman Empire, and because a lot of the writing in alchemy is actually in Greek. And so when the Roman Empire fell, before it fell, it split into two. The empire based in Rome, and then you got the empire based in Constantinople, Istanbul in Turkey. So the empire split in half, and then the Western Roman Empire, the Roman Empire based in Rome, that was conquered by the Goths or the Huns or someone. Not my area of history, but basically I think it's the Goths, wasn't it? They sacked Rome in the 3rd century AD. But when the Roman Empire split, the thing about Romans, so they had taken on, like they took over Greece to start with, didn't they? And the thing about Romans, they seem to me to be a very pragmatic type of people. And so like all that Greek knowledge from ancient Greece, all the philosophers, they thought, this is great, they're really logical, we can use this. But anything practical they used, and they wrote about it. But all the other stuff, all the theory and everything, and the mystical stuff and all that sort of thing, they couldn't be bothered with all that. So a lot of that got left out. And by the sort of, I think it was by the 6th or 7th century, basically no one in the Western Roman Empire could read Greek, and it was all the Latin. And the Latin only had the stuff that the Romans thought was interesting and useful to them. So a large part of the Greek corpus didn't get into Western Europe, but was preserved by the Arabs. And so from the sort of 7th century onwards, the Arabian Peninsula and Islam, as it spread through and into Asia Minor and all North Africa and into the Iberian Peninsula and Spain. By the 8th century, it was pushing into Europe, but luckily Charles Martel defeated a massive Muslim army in somewhere in France, and that was the extent. Like Northern Pyrenees was was the extent that the Muslims actually reached in Europe, because Charles Martel, he sort of stopped the expansion eastwards into Europe. So he what was I talking about? Oh yeah, so that Islamic Empire, if you like, they still had knowledge of the Greek, and a lot of the Greek writings got translated into Arabic, and then it was preserved, and it was also worked upon. So a lot of the early alchemists are actually Arabic alchemists. So some people like Razi and Geber and Avicenna, those are all originally Arabic alchemists, but some people might recognize the names because they've been italicized or into like the Western speech. So we got to know them through those names, but a lot of that stuff was like the golden age of Arabic science. So up until about 10th into the 11th century, the Muslim culture was far superior to the Christian, and the scientific knowledge was far superior to the Christian, the Western European scientific knowledge. But then by about the sort of 12th century, you had in the Spanish area, you had people translating from the Greek into the Arabic, but also back into Latin. And so from about the 12th century onwards, mainly through Spain and Constantinople, then you had all that lost knowledge that had been lost in Western Europe, but preserved in the Eastern Roman Empire and the Islamic lands. All that knowledge now starting to get translated back into Latin. So then it slowly came back into Western Europe. So a lot of people don't realise that we've got Islam to thank for holding on to that knowledge that otherwise would have been lost.
Yeah, that's remarkably true. I mean, I've only ever come across brief references to kind of like the amazing science or even the mathematics. I remember following a history of mathematics with a presenter that I can't remember the name of, but I think he had a surname that I couldn't always pronounce right. But he did kind of like touch on mathematical theory, at least, coming from the Islamic part of the world and that history.
Not Jim Al-Khalili, is it? Because Jim Al-Khalili is really into all that.
I want to say the name Mark, but I can't remember the surname. I could be wrong. I like you named that it's something that I've read or watched many years ago now.
Yes.
But oh gosh, wow!
And in my previous
teacher,
my previous monologue, I dare say that I got a lot of the dates wrong. So if there's anyone said it didn't happen then, okay, I'm rubbish at dates. I'm sort of, as long as I've got it within the right sort of century either side, I hope. Then, because I'm rubbish at dates. But but that's what I'm all about. You see, is sort of bringing to the public, and it's informal teaching, if you like, at historical events, in schools, but also science festivals if they have me and whatever. And it's bringing all this, but it's not just the science; it's the fact that everything, you can't separate one thing from another. Everything is all together. And when you learn about one thing, you learn about history, you learn about science, and you learn about people's writings and all that sort of thing, and also the stories of the people who did all that thing as well. A lot of them were really, really, really interesting personal stories as well, in with all this knowledge and the scientific knowledge, all sorts of brilliant personal tales. Like Tycho Brahe. Probably mangling how you say his name, but was he Dutch or Danish? something like that. But and he was a famous astronomer back in the days when astronomy and astrology were similar disciplines, and quite often many famous astronomers were also astrologers as well. And one of my favourite things about him is the fact that he had his nose cut off in a sword fighting duel, and so later pictures, paintings that you see of him, he's actually got I think it's made of bronze, leather or bronze or something like that, but he's got an artificial nose that was made for him because he had his nose cut off in a duel.
That was a bad duel. Did he win that duel? Or did he lose?
I can't remember. I can't remember. Yeah.
Oh gosh! Wow. Well, to bring it slightly more back to the present day, I know kind of like from our brief chats back when we were part of the Viking and Valkyries podcast, the actual play TTRPG roleplay game.
Yes.
Ian mentioned Moorforge Settlement in Cumbria and your role in that. Could you tell us more about that, please?
Yes, blimey. So it's something that I'm involved with. I actually use it. So, well, start at the beginning. It's owned by a guy called David Watson. And by the way, I've got to show the Moorforge t-shirt.
Yep, so, very good.
Yeah, Moorforge has merch. David Watson. He was an industrial blacksmith that worked at Sellafield, and when he left Sellafield, he sort of became self-employed, and he does. He's still a blacksmith, but works out of his own workshop now. And he had an interest in Vikings, and it was sort of about 2004. He sort of made contact with this local place called Grampus, which is based in near Wigton, and it's an archaeological and sort of training thing. And they used to do loads of stuff in the EU under Erasmus and all that sort of thing. I've been away on a couple of things with those. Absolutely brilliant. Obviously, Brexit scotched all that, but you can tell I'm not a fan. So he sort of went away on a few courses because they sort of specialised in Viking Age stuff, Viking Age craft, and as a blacksmith, he was interested in that. And he got invited to go to do an iron smelt in Iceland, so he went off there.
Wow.
Yeah, and got really interested because there's a guy over there whose name eludes me, but he specialised in making sort of Viking style buildings. And so they got funding through Grampus to come to some land that David owns, a field that he owns next to his house, and build an Icelandic style Viking smithy with forge and everything, which is what they did. And it sort of sat there in his field for a couple of years, and he thought, well, do with a bit more. So he decided to build a workshop, but it was a workshop that had a living area to go with it. So it's sort of a bit like a longhouse, but only half of it was totally enclosed. The other half was half roofed, but was open on one side, so you could sort of do woodworking and other crafts and whatever. But then when that was built, someone approached him about having folk nights, doing folk music in this place. So I said, yeah, because it'd be nice to see it actually get used. So and I'd also been involved a little bit. So I was there for the opening in 2014 of the city, and I was sort of in a tent and everything, holding forth, doing my thing. And then we had the folk nights in the Viking. They called it the Longhouse, but it was really a workshop. And then I think it was a Christmas one, or towards Christmas, and so many people turned up that they couldn't actually get in.
Oh, bless.
And so people were peering through the door, and so they thought, well, this is no good, because if they get this popular, then we need a bit bigger building, and the easiest way of doing it was to roof the entire building and have it all in one long one long building. So that's when it became the proper Longhouse. And shortly after that, I started doing school groups there. And then, and we had sort of more open days and stuff there.
Mm-hmm.
And then about 2022, I'm busy doing schools. 2022, David thinks one Longhouse isn't enough. I decided to build another one that was about 3 times the size.
Oh gosh.
So this new one was 18 meters by 7 meters. At its widest, narrowed down to 5 meters. So it's a good shape. So it's sort of like that shape, sort of boat shaped, if you like, and it's also got a hog's back on it as well.
Oh, very nice.
So and it's typical Longhouse shape, and we've almost finished that actually. I mean, it's all needs a door putting on it, and half the roof needs shingling still. But now we've got an 18 meter by 7 meter space where we can do more stuff, which is for schools is brilliant, because getting 30 kids in the smaller Longhouse is a bit of a squeeze. If it turned out that it was raining all day, it made life difficult, let's just say. That wasn't a big space for 30 kids, but now we've got this big Longhouse, 18 meters by 7 meters, that is absolutely huge, and so that is going to get used for more things. So now, like since about 2022, we've started having reenactments there. Despite the fact that we've got a local reenactment group, it's quite funny because they hardly ever use the site.
Oh.
Yeah, there's Viking reenactment group. They hardly ever use it. But there's a group in Edinburgh and another group in Manchester, and these are Eastern Viking groups. So Eastern Viking tradition. So like most of them have come from Poland originally. So it's mostly Poles. So and in Viking reenactment now, there's like sort of 3 main styles, I suppose you could say. There is the Western style that was developed in this country. Then you've got the Eastern style, which developed in Eastern Europe, and you also got another style called Huscarl, which is sort of a mixture of both, if you like. But the main thing about Western style is when you're fighting, because we're not really armored. Most people don't wear armor, and so when you're hitting each other with these sort of huge, great blunted weapons, we hit each other relatively gently because we get up and go to most people have to get up and go to work on Monday, and bones and faces split open and all that sort of thing. It happens, obviously.
Yeah, that'll be a tricky email to the boss. Sorry, boss, I just got killed by a Viking over the weekend.
Yeah. So, I'm in hospital. Someone hit me with an axe. But in the Eastern style, they actually go for it, but they wear lots of body armor, which again isn't authentic, because in my weapons demo that I do about the physics of weapons, I also include, when I'm using the sharp weapons, I'm hitting this poor cabbage as hard as I can, and I start off with a fully armored cabbage. So he has mail on top. It's called mail, not chainmail. So it's mail over it, and I also give it some padding. So so I've got this square of wadmol, which is a thick woolen cloth that was a very valuable trade good in Viking times, and I fold it so it's 8 layers thick. So it's about that thick. And sort of place that over and then put the mail on top of that, and sort of talk about how, while there's no evidence for Vikings or the Saxons of that period wearing padding under their armor, I sort of say, seems stupid. So here's some padding. So some people think that maybe because they didn't have the early medieval padded gambesons that you see like the Normans wearing, whatever, and the knights after that, they didn't have that in Viking times. So maybe because to not wear padding would be stupid, because it should sort of alleviate the blunt force trauma. from a heavy strike. Maybe they wore tunics, or thick woolen tunics of half dozen layers or something. Yeah, which is a reasonable thing. Although you're going to be really, really hot and sweaty in there.
Yes.
But anyway, so I show what happens, and the cabbage that I use is a hard white cabbage, tougher than human flesh. And when I'm hitting it as hard as I can, and I'm using like a sword, I use a langsax because I haven't got a sharp sword. Same thing though. And I use an axe, and especially when they see what the axe does, a good hard blow, and it can destroy the cabbage underneath through the mail, prevents it cutting. But that thick layer of padding, even with that blunt force trauma from an axe, is considerable. And considering most of your Vikings had axes, it was considerable. And so my theory is, and it is, it's basically a hypothesis based on the evidence that I see from this demo, that if you get a really strong, powerful hit, especially with an axe, the padding ain't going to do that much. The evidence is, look, I've just smashed this cabbage through that thing. And so my hypothesis is based on that the reason they didn't wear padding under their armor is because it would slow them down. It would make them less able to fight for long for a long period. And it's much easier just to get out of the way and get a glancing blow than it would a full force blow. And if you are going to get that force blow, you're going to get broken bones anyway. So what's the point of being hot and sweaty?
Yeah.
So that's what I sort of put across. That's my own hypothesis. Obviously, apart from my demo, there's no evidence for it, and there are limitations to the demo as well, because it's a stationary cabbage, and I'm lining up and I'm hitting it, spot on. So it's but if you look at the work that Hurstwick do, which are an American, are they American or Canadian? But they I call myself the Science Viking, but they are true Science Vikings, because they use scientific instruments and everything when they're measuring their stuff. And they do all sorts of really good stuff. Really, really, really good group to look up, Hurstwick. Their website is excellent, and they go and do sort of experiments on hall burnings and all sorts of stuff. They take scenes from the sagas and try and reenact them, sort of, not reenact them, recreate them, and they sort of take measurements and everything, what's the temperature of the fire. They're going to stick a temperature probe in it to see how hot it gets and all that sort of thing. And those are true Science Vikings. And one of the things that they say is and there's a really good book called Men of Terror. Oh yeah, hold on. This book by William Short.
I've heard of that one before.
And it's an excellent book because it doesn't just talk about the Viking times. It says a comprehensive analysis of Viking combat. And when they say, when you sort of read the sagas, it's when you sort of look at other people, and you've got the later manuscripts, the fencing manuscripts, and the fighting manuals and whatever from the sort of 13th century onwards. The Viking way of fighting, they say, was all about power. So when you see a reenactment and you see everyone sort of doing all this tippy-tappy stuff and whatever, that's not fighting. That's sport fighting. It's more like fencing. It's a sport combat. But when you're talking about real combat, talking about hard, powerful blows, they're aiming to finish the fight in one hit. Is what they want. And so all their blows are really powerful. So my thing there is, if most of the blows that are going in are powerful and are aimed to take you down with one hit, then maybe the majority of the things that actually hit you, if you get hit, you are going down. So where in the mail, will protect you from a glancing blow. And what would make a powerful blow, a glancing blow, is actually your movement getting out of the way. And even if you get hit, hopefully it's like a lot of the power's taken away because you're moving out of the way of it, so it's more of a deflection. So so that's what we're looking at. But so when we've got these reenactment groups, so these Eastern Viking reenactment groups seem to have taken over Moorforge. So we've got one of those every year, sort of in June or July. And then we have craft fairs there as well. So every May we have a craft fair. So we're looking at sort of heritage crafts. Because of where Moorforge is, we don't actually get that big a footfall. So it's in the middle in Cumbria. It's near Cockermouth, at the bottom of the A66. And it's about sort of 15 minutes drive from the roundabout on the way to Cockermouth. But because we're a bit out of the way, even a successful event is like if we get sort of 300 or 400 members of the public come over a whole weekend, to us that's successful. So these events are more like the craft fair. It's actually more of a networking event where all the crafters can meet each other, can chat to each other. We've had people collaborating with each other based on meeting each other at these craft fairs and things. So and so they come along and do all their setup, and we get people coming. If they sell stuff, that's brilliant. Obviously, it's a good bonus. But we don't have a pitch fee or anything. They can come and they do it for free. Because it's mainly a get together and to enjoy the site of Moorforge. Because one thing about Moorforge is it's a community. And like we've built up this big community of the people who use the site and also the people who come to visit us. And so we've got reenactors, we've got crafters. One of the main guys who organises the craft event and the reenactment event, Ashai Velderson, he's Velcat Arts. He runs his own reenactment group, Modern Vikings, I think they're called. They're an Eastern style, but they're also heavily into living history as well. So like he wants to do the whole thing, and he's sort of he's a tattooist, so he does brilliant tattoos. The Moorforge team, which is sort of about half a dozen people in the Moorforge team, everyone has got a tattoo of the Moorforge logo, except me.
Awesome.
Except me, because I don't do tattoos.
That's fine. You attend there and do your own thing in person, so you honour it and are part of it anyway. Yeah. And I think it's despite kind of like Cumbria's relatively remote location from most of the north of England, because of course you're going to have to correct me now. Is it below the Lake District or is it part of the Lake District? That's how bad my geography is.
The Lake District is part of Cumbria.
There we go. Thank you. See, I live in the north of England, ladies and gents, but I'm pretty much just on the eastern side between York and Scarborough. That's the extent of my knowledge. Well, between Huddersfield and Scarborough, so I'm now in the West Yorkshire part. But I think it's really good that Cumbria has that connection, that representation of Viking history, because the Vikings did populate a lot between kind of like Ireland, the Isle of Man, and then all the way across through kind of that area and beyond.
Exactly.
Because you don't always think of kind of like, Northumbria, they've definitely got Viking history, but it's not always put together. When you hear the word Viking, you just think of York or Winchester or Nottingham or Derby. And of course, everything in the south it's so much in the north, but then it's not always dotted together in common perception, I think.
As well, Cumbria is more well known for Romans anyway. Because you've got Hadrian's Wall, obviously, Carlisle, big Roman place. You've got Maryport, big Roman place. You've got Ravenglass. You've got the Roman baths there. You've got Hardknott Fort, the Hardknott Roman Fort, and the Hardknott Pass. And so everyone thinks about Cumbria being a Roman place, but arguably the Vikings had a far greater influence on Cumbria, because all the names of Cumbria are either the old Brittonic names or Viking names. When we go out, we don't go out to climb the hills or the mountains. We go out on the fells. Fell is a Viking word. So and loads of the in fact majority of the the town names and whatever are all based on Viking names and everything. Yeah. So, but back to Moorforge, like you say, having Moorforge there is brilliant, because when schools in Cumbria wanted to do when they're doing Vikings as primary Vikings part of the curriculum, if they wanted to do a school visit about Vikings, they had to go to Jorvik Viking Centre.
Yes, which is a fair trip from Cumbria.
It's a fair trip. So basically, it'd be part of a residential where they go away for a few days or a week or whatever. So it'd be part of a much bigger thing. But now I get schools usually within about an hour's drive. So south of Cumbria is a bit more problematic, but certainly central west Cumbria, all the way out to Penrith and all the way out to Carlisle, and down to sort of Whitehaven as well. So that area of north and central Cumbria, we've basically got a Viking place that their schools can go and just go for the day. So up to an hour to get there is quite reasonable. But I normally do a day there sort of like 10 till 2. So they have a good 4 hours there with half-hour lunch. And it's immersive, because we have the little Longhouse, we've got the smithy, we've now got the big Longhouse, we've got a workshop, we've got vegetable garden, we've got a willow copse, we've got poles.
Oh, nice.
We've also got a grave. We've got a runestone as well now.
Oh, wow.
And the plans for the future are to have a palisade around it with an animal barn. We're going to have a small chapel there, which we hope to get consecrated, and a stone wheel cross as well, because like Moorforge is based in the 10th century, and the 10th century was a time, certainly in Cumbria, of transition from paganism to Christianity.
Oh yes, definitely.
So one of the things that we're keen on showing is that transition. So we're going to have hogsbacks there, got the runestone, got a Viking grave, but we've also got also want to have a Christian chapel and a Christian cross as well to show that transition. Because we've got some of the
decided who's going to be in the grave? Who's it going to be dedicated to on the runestone?
Well, the runestone, unfortunately, one of the core members of the Moorforge team died back in 2020. Him and his wife, it's Sigvard, his name was, and he'd do anything at Moorforge. Anything needed doing, Sigvard was there. But he died. Him and his wife both died of COVID.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, which was a great tragedy, because as well as being a brilliant volunteer, he also made the most fantastic mead as well. So he was Moorforge's mead maker. So we put a grave, like a boat-shaped stone grave, and we say that is where Sigvard is. Although he's
what a fitting dedication for him.
And the runestone is basically to memorialize Sigvard and his wife, and it's actually had an international team of experts working on it to get the inscription right. So Adam Parsons, who was an archaeologist with Oxford Archaeology North, and he also does Blue Axe reproduction.
Yes.
Yep. So
I'm meaning to invite him on one day. I will do.
Yeah, you've got to get Adam on. Yeah. He knows so much. I learned loads of him. and also, as well as that, like head knowledge, he's such a talented craftsman. The stuff that he does is absolutely amazing. But actually, it's quite funny, because I think it was about 22 or 23. He Judith Jesh.
Oh yes.
Yep. So she every year she used to bring. I think she's retired now, isn't she?
She's now got a visiting professor position at the University of Highlands and Islands.
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
because she's now got a new book out, ladies and gentlemen, about the Giles of Orkney, which I have to add to my reading list.
Yes. Yeah, but anyway, so every year she used to bring her postgrad students to Cumbria, because we've got loads and loads and loads of sites in Cumbria. Like, I live not far from the Gosforth Cross, and the Urton Cross, and there's I'm about 3 miles from Gloucester Cross,
Mm-hmm.
And the hogsbacks and everything, and there's hogsbacks all over the place, and like fragments of various carvings all over the place from Viking times. And so she comes to bring them, do the tour, and Adam invited her to come to Moorforge, and it turned out to be on a day where I just had a school there, so we arranged. School's gone by sort of 2:30, so if they came after that, so I think they came about sort of 3 o'clock or something. And the idea was they were going. I keep all my school stuff out, and Adam was going to do a tour of the site and everything, and then like they could spend a few minutes with me, sort of. And what was supposed to have been a 45-minute visit ended up being 2.5 hours.
That's the best kind of visit, though.
Yes, because I also brought a couple of spare cabbages with me, and so and I had my coin striking stuff, and so as well as like tour of the site and everything, they were looking at all the artifacts on my table, and I was sort of talking to them about that and all the different bits and pieces. And then and these are PhD students, and that's the thing, like PhD students in Viking stuff, and they were all just absolutely rapt at the stuff that I tell school kids. and they all had to do some coin striking, and and also the highlight for them was using my sharp Dane axe on cabbages as well.
I think it should be part of every course on Viking.
So what was supposed to be a 45-minute visit turned into 2.5 hours, and they had to postpone their visit to the Gloucester Cross because they spent their time at Moorforge with me instead. But yeah, so that was awesome. But anyway, so when Sigvard died, we thought, wouldn't it be good to have a runestone? And Adam, he said, well, I'll talk to Judith and see if she can do the translation and the runes. And Judith also roped in 2 or 3 other world experts. And so what we've got on our runestone is runes of the period, of the area, of the dialect of Old Norse that would have been spoken in that time.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So as
does Sigvard have family? Do they know about this wonderful project in his memory?
Yes. They
must be dead chuffed with how well everything is going for that.
Yeah, but the really funny thing is, like, there's two quotes from David Watson, the owner. That the first was like, "Build and they will come," and my favourite quote from him, because we've now got this site that's still under construction, but this site that has become an education hub, it's become a social hub, it's become a hub for re-enactors and people all over the world, and we've had world experts work on like the runestone and everything, and it's all that, and he sort of looks, and sometimes he says it like a bit plaintively, it's sort of just a hobby that got out of hand. But final thing,
they're the best things, though. They're the best things. This whole podcast of mine is simply a hobby, simply because I need people to talk to about Viking stuff with, and none of my immediate family or my friend circle or even my work colleagues, they're just not on this level. I need to find people of your ilk, of my kindred to spirit and curiosity and interest, just to just rant and rave about it all.
Yeah, but final thing about Moorforge, I'm sure you've heard of this, the Longhouse that was found at High Tarns near Silloth.
I did. I heard it. It was popping up all over social media back when I used to be on Twitter at the time, and then I have since left.
So that was another Grampus project.
Wow.
And they were originally thinking it was going to be a site associated with, because there's an abbey site there, Holmley, or I can't remember the name of it. You notice I'm not very good at names. Anyway, because there's a major abbey there. It's near Silloth. It's about 8 miles from Moorforge as the crow flies. But when they actually did, so they sort of looked at the geophysics. Well, they looked at the like Google Maps, Google Earth stuff, and thought there's something there.
Mm.
So Grampus said, right, let's get some funding. And we think it's going to be to do with the abbey that's nearby.
Mm.
But it turned out to be a longhouse.
Mm.
If you ever come to Moorforge, which you do need to one day,
I will do one day. It's on my bucket list.
Yeah, and come the craft fair is a good time to come because you've got loads of top quality crafters there. Or there's the training and traders, which is in June, and the craft fair is in May. It's all on the Moorforge Facebook page anyway. But anyway, so our big longhouse is 18 meters by 7 at its widest. The longhouse that they excavated, they have measured it as 50 meters by 15.
Wow.
And when you go into our big longhouse, now that it's all covered up and it's actually a room, it still needs a front door on it. But when you go in there, you think, oh my God, this is amazing. Because one of the things that we're going to be starting next year is Viking experience weekends.
Oh, yes. I'll sign up. I'll start saving now.
So, groups of, well, we're saying a minimum of 10 to make it worth our while, up to about 20-ish. So it's not too big. But we're going to be starting doing those. But next year, we've got the Midgard Viking Brotherhood coming for their international meeting.
They sound serious.
They've been coming for a couple of years now. It's quite funny, when they first approached us, I had no idea who they were. And as a public meeting re-enactor or historical interpreter, as I prefer to call myself, sounds a bit more official. And
living historian is the other phrase I've heard.
Yeah, living historian. Yeah. But when I first heard about it, I thought, oh dear, this sounds dodgy. Are they going to be a weird pagan group who've got all their Viking knowledge from the Vikings TV series, or even worse, is it going to be one of those pagan neo-Nazi biker gangs?
Yes, there is an issue with right wings, unfortunately.
Yes, but when I looked into them, they are awesome. They are a Viking-y, pagan-y men's mental health self-help group.
Wow.
Who do loads of charity work for mental health awareness.
That does sound awesome.
Absolutely.
It's much needed.
Yeah, absolutely awesome people. And they approached us saying, can you put on a Viking event for us over the weekend? Feast and all sorts of stuff. And we did. And this will be, I think, next year will be their 4th visit, but they're having their international meet now because we're limited on the amount of people we can have. We've limited the numbers to 100.
Gosh,
which they could easily get 250, but we said, we literally can't fit more than 100 people here. But our hall, we worked out that we will in the feast. And Sue, David's partner, I've been to many Viking feasts, especially the Viking Society. And I'm sorry, anyone in the Vike who has put on feasts, but absolutely nobody puts on a Viking feast like Sue does. They are the best. They are the absolute best. She is absolutely incredible. And so what we've worked out is in the big longhouse, we should be able to seat about 100 to 110 people for a sit-down Viking feast.
Wow.
In fact, the background that you've got, that's basically sort of like the way our hall is. And so we're going to have benches and tables down either side, except
brilliant.
We're going so basically your one is a bit wider than ours, but basically that setup going to be that setup. And we worked out we can get about 110 people, including the high seat at the back.
Yeah, this one's also got a high seat, although it's got a couple of stuffed bears in the corner. I don't think you'll be having stuffed bears.
Yeah, you can see. Yeah, so we should be able to have a feast with about 100 people. But for the main Viking experience weekends, we want to limit it to about 20-ish. It's much more, but we do combat training using foam weapons, not steel. And so we're aiming to get sort of corporate people there and stag do's and whatever, all that sort of thing, and people who just want a fantastic weekend and a fantastic experience. And so we're going to be doing those next year. But anyway, this longhouse that they found, 50 meters by 18, ours is 18 by 7. And what we've worked out is if you took our longhouse, duplicated it, and put the other one by its side, and then duplicate those two and put them on the end, and then duplicate one more and stick it across the back, that is how big that hall was.
Oh my gosh.
And when you walk into our hall and think, oh my God, that one that they found, and it's the largest Viking longhouse they found in the UK, in the British Isles, that they're excavated. It must have been absolutely enormous.
Must have taken a lot of effort to build as well to be that big.
Yeah. I think it was from about 990 or 970 or 990 to about 1040. It was there.
Wow. That's remarkable. And the fact that you've got all these exciting things happening at Moorforge and the big exciting plans for next year and beyond.
Yeah.
It's so great because, of course, I've only come across other kind of like 3 other replica type Viking houses, long houses or otherwise. And the only one I can think of is at Mearn Park, which is outside York. But they're pretty much primarily used by the local Jorvik, I think it is called the Jorvik Vikings group. Because I managed to organise a slight coup of sorts in that I was into cosplay many years ago before COVID, primarily for the Dragon Age game, and I organised a Dragon Age photo shoot at Mearn Park using their buildings and scenes and stuff. And we only were able to achieve it because one of my friends in the cosplay group was also a reenactment, and she knew the guy that ran Mearn Park. So it's kind of like a you-know-who connection. But I know they don't really do much public things, but they also host lots of school visits, such as Moorforge does. And then there's the Ancient Technology Centre all the way down in Dorset, which I managed to go to on my many family holidays in Dorset and see their impressive Longhouse. They do Viking weekends as well. So there's only 3 that I know of in the entire country of England, considering how much Viking heritage we have.
And they're building one on the Isle of Man as well.
Are they now? Oh, that's brilliant. Actually, I would love to go to the Isle of Man still.
Actually inspired by Moorforge.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, so Moorforge has also inspired someone else to build one on the Isle of Man.
You'll have to send like a little raiding party to visit, have a feast, and then invite them over.
Yeah. I don't think they've got a longhouse up yet. There's sort of, again, it's like a matter of funding, because Moorforge as well, the only building that was funded was the smithy originally back in 2014. Everything else has been self-funded through school visits and events that we hold there, and whatever of his own money that David can put in. So it's entirely self-funded.
You say it's all run by volunteers, is it not?
Yeah, basically. Yeah, it's all volunteers.
Because I know it's mostly volunteers at the Ancient Technology Centre as well.
I mean, I pay David to use the site, so I charge the school, and then the money the school gives me, some of that goes to Moorforge, and so all the events, they all pay part of what they get to Moorforge, basically to finish the buildings, because I think David wants to have it done, completed in the next couple of years. He's approaching retirement age.
He's got a wonderful legacy.
Oh yeah, basically Moorforge is that's his retirement package, is Moorforge. And then and people like me using it. So and I'm hoping that, especially if we can get these Viking experience weekends off the ground, that I'll still do events and stuff and schools, but basically Moorforge will become my main source of income, is what I'm hoping. I mean, it's been 10 years in the build up to it. So, but yeah, fingers crossed.
Well, it has been such a real joy and pleasure speaking to you about all of this, Terry. You've got so many fascinating stories, anecdotes, and things, and knowledge. The knowledge your brain has, I am in awe of it. I really,
I do go on a bit, don't I? I do go on a bit.
Oh no, it's all brilliant stuff. It is captivating, and that's why adults and kids like really will listen to you. And I hope I'm as passionate about as my crazy Viking geekiness I am as at your regal age, sir, because it's sensational and kind of like, yeah, it's so great to have you. And I really wish you many, many, many more years successful being the Science Viking. I want many more cabbages to fall underneath your axe blade. And of course, I wish Moorforge all the success it can for you and the rest of the team there. And I will definitely try and visit one day. One day, maybe I'll even drag my kid along, or kids, depending on how life turns out, just to show. Because I have a secret agenda of slowly converting. Because she knows Mummy likes Vikings, and she knows Mummy likes Thor, and that's the extent of her knowledge so far. But
yeah. Well, May next year we've got the craft fair. June is the traders and trading, where we've got the Polish Vikings groups. There, and they do put on quite a good show.
Fabulous. Yeah. Well, if anyone's near Cumbria, traveling to Cumbria, or just wants a reason to go to Cumbria, here is your reason.
I'll be there.
Please do.
Doing my coin striking and my cabbage killing, and basically I'm the entertainment.
Oh, what a brilliant entertainment you are, and I really appreciate you taking your time out of your busy day, because I know you're going back to Moorforge today to pick up some stuff to go to more events and more schools.
Yes, I've got a school tomorrow, so I've got to go to Moorforge to go and fetch all my stuff. Well, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you.
Yeah. So it's been since February. I've been looking forward to
it. It has. It's been one planning, because back in February I could only do one episode per month, but now my kid is at school. Thank you, turning 5. I have time in a day to do more Viking talks and more podcast episodes. So thank you very much again. Do check out the Science Viking website, check out Moorforge. You can follow Terry's Instagram account and see photos of what he's up to and all his various guises and where he's at next. And of course, he will be at Jorvik Viking Festival, where I will definitely find you again and give you another big hug, because I just adore you, sir.
Thank you very much. Yes, you can never have too many hugs, can you?
And what better than to hug a Viking, really? Because they're as friendly as they are scary sometimes, depending on how you approach them.
I'm a very friendly Viking.
Well, thank you very much for attending, Terry, today, and thank you to anyone who's listened and watched this long. It's been a long episode, but I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly have. And of course, do subscribe wherever you're watching and listening for more fascinating guests and their all Norse talk coming up soon.
Thank you very much. Bye, everyone. And thanks for having me.
Terry.
See ya.
Thank you very much for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed the discussions between my special guests and myself. Please do check out the episode blurb for links to their works and websites. If you liked this episode, let me know by giving it a thumbs up. Let me know if you learned something new in the comments. And of course, click subscribe to Valhalla Conversations wherever you are listening or watching. This podcast can be watched on YouTube and YouTube Music, and it can also be listened to on Spotify, Amazon Music, Podcast Index, and on rss.com. We hope you can join us in Valhalla again soon for more conversations.